episode, a special episode, sort of Screen Surfers. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Sorsdahl.
I'm Francois Donation. That camera over there is where I'm supposed to be looking.
Yes.
And I hit the mic. How's everybody doing today? Don't answer that. You can't.
A rhetorical question. I think it's a rhetorical question, Captain. Line from the movie we watched. Anyways, we're here to talk about the just released new Tom Cruise film, Top Gun Maverick, yes, excuse me.
So this is a sequel to the 1986 movie Top Gun, obviously.
Yes.
Very famous movie. Made more famous by Kenny Loggins in his song Highway to the Danger Zone. I've seen the first Top Gun like twice maybe.
It's like, as an 80s movie, it's like pretty peak 80s movie in terms of all the tropes of 80s stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously it has the whole, like, for the time, very epic dogfighting stuff going on. So, like, I agree. It wasn't like a big deal for me, but
yeah, it kind of fits into that slot of a lot of 80s movies for me, where it's like there's a lot of people who have a lot of nostalgia for the 80s and cinema for the 80s. Like, lots of people are like fucking diehard Back to the Future fans. Lots of people are diehard fucking Ghostbusters fans. Lots of people are diehard, like, whatever. It seems like there's those movies that are like have this cult like following, and I've never really been into any of them with that fervency. So I've always been like, yeah, Ghostbusters is pretty good. Yeah, fucking Top Gun's pretty good. Like, that's always kind of how it's been. I don't know. It's because I feel like it's because we grew up in the 90s and like so many amazing movies came out in the 90s in the early millennium, like Jurassic Park and The Lord of the Rings, and like, so those movies were always like, well, these movies are fucking like a tier above those other movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I so like just a long way of saying that it's like I wasn't really big Top Gun fan.
Like, we didn't go into this with, like, I would say neither of us went into this with super high expectations.
I mean, I'll say I did have super high expectations.
Okay.
But it's very specific. Like, I remember the reason, like, I was sold on this movie pretty immediately, right when the first trailer came out. And I remember seeing the trailer and being like, this looks phenomenal. Like,
that's fair.
There's this scene in the trailer, and it's in the movie, or it's right at the beginning, so it's not a spoiler, but it's like Tom Cruise is flying this like stealth bomber jet at the beginning, and he rips over this fucking like toll gate thing, and it rips the roof off the building, and then the roof falls back in the building, and I'm like, that's filmmaking, baby. Like, that shit like that, cool epic shit like that just gets me so excited. I remember seeing that, and there's like a couple other moments in the trailer where I'm like, this movie,
it looked incredible. It looked epic. It looked very, very epic.
Has the potential for greatness. And so, like, I started joking. And the movie was supposed to come out in fucking 2019. It was delayed 3 years because of COVID nonsense. And yeah, I remember seeing it and like waiting. It's like, oh, it's been delayed a year. It's been delayed 2 years, whatever. And like every time I'd see a new trailer, every time I'd be like, best movie ever. Like, this has to be the best movie ever. Like, I need this to be the best movie ever. And so obviously, kind of a joke and tongue-in-cheek, and like that kind of teetered off or whatever, but it's like I maintained a steady level of excitement for the movie, and I am very glad to report that this movie, I don't even think it just lived up to my expectations.
Surpassed for me big time.
It exceeded. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, if I had to sum it up in a short sentence or phrase, non-stop thrill ride would be how I would sum this thing up. Like, also, I will say, just as an overall comment, legitimately one of the best theater experiences I've had in a long time, in terms of, I don't know how you enjoy that movie in any other setting. Like, it was so tailor-made to seeing it on the big screen with that sound system, and like, just everything about it was just, in terms of visually and, as our colleague would say, audioly, just was, Taylor, it was perfect for the theater. Perfect. I can't imagine watching that movie outside of the theater.
I mean, like, I think it's a good, like, it's a, how do I say this? Like, I'm trying to remember the director's name. Like, I was going to look this up before the review, but whatever.
I'll look it up.
It's a director that I've kind of been following loosely for a while. Like, all his work I've really enjoyed. Like, I remember when Tron Legacy came out. I think it was in 2010. And I remember, actually, this is kind of weird talking about theater going experiences. I remember I went to visit my older sister at university in Vancouver. And it was the first time the only theaters I'd really been to were like these shitty, like the shitty theater in Swift Current and like the amazing theater in Gull Lake. But it was like smaller screens, not huge sound systems. Like I'd never really been to a big theater. Well, that's not true. I've been to Calgary, but it's like rarely did I go to these big theaters. And so I remember going to Vancouver, and my sister took us out to the Scotiabank Theater there, and we went and saw, I think it was, we saw Tron Legacy, and I want to say it was in like 3D IMAX or something. So it was like I think it was like the very first 3D movie I really saw, and I remember it, like I was just amazed by the movie, and it was like, it's one of like 3 3D movies that I've seen that I thought was done really well. And ever since, and then Tron Legacy came out, and then it was weird because it wasn't received terrifically well, but it's a movie that I watch semi-frequently, and I think it's really underrated. But ever since Tron Legacy, that director, I'm like, you know how to fucking frame up a shot, you know how to make engaging action.
Joseph Kosinski.
Yeah. And so then after that, he did a movie called Oblivion, which is another movie with Tom Cruise. It's a sci-fi movie, and that is also like a fucking gorgeous looking movie. And I quite enjoyed that movie too. It's kind of like generic sci-fi stuff going on, but
he also wrote that movie.
Yes, it was supposed to be a graphic novel actually, and it was weird. Like, I remember when the movie came out, and they said it's based on a graphic novel, and then I scoured the internet to find this graphic novel, and then it's like a graphic novel that was never released. So it's technically based on a graphic novel, but never a released one.
Not one that actually exists.
Yeah, which is bizarre.
Well, I guess it exists, but not in the public space.
Yeah. But anyways, visually that movie is just spectacular. Yeah. And so he was never like, he was a director that he was kind of like a shine over substance kind of guy, where it was like, you know, visually how to get a movie across, like you direct action really well, like all this stuff. It's kind of like what people accuse Zack Snyder of. Like, it's like visually you're incredible, but substance wise, like maybe you're lacking in some regards. But I think Top Gun Maverick, like, it felt so confident in every avenue. Like,
every avenue. I totally agree.
Yeah, it wasn't only the cinematography that was incredible, which you'd expect from this director, but it was like the writing felt like it was like, this is exactly the movie we want to make, and we know the movie we want to make. We're making a sequel to Top Gun, and we're going to stick to our guns that way. It was like the practical effects, the effects work were all like, we're going to shoot this all in F-18s. Like, we know how we want to do this. I got to say, like, the editing was... It's like, you're not supposed to notice editing, and you don't notice editing, but it was like, while I was watching, I'm like, this is so tight in the way that it's structured, and like the way each scene is paced in terms of editing and stuff. And it was just like,
usually if you're noticing editing, it's because there's a fuck up and it's bad. Perfect example, the Bohemian Rhapsody, that movie, editing is obtrusively bad. And this, like you said, like I noticed how just clean and tight and like just, it was just edited just, I hesitate to use perfectly because that's such a ridiculous standard, but it just served the whole thing, that confidence, that flow, like I said, nonstop thrill ride. Like, it's had me on the edge of my seat the entire movie. And man, I'll also say it being a sequel to a beloved 80s movie, it, much like I would say the first season, especially of Stranger Things, I think the thing that everyone loved about that first season was it captured this nostalgia, and it did so in this like really interesting and unique way, and just had this really like awesome nostalgic vibe to it.
Yeah.
While still being like different and new and sci-fi, it was able to do both things. And I think that this movie, Top Gun Maverick, also achieved that same kind of, had that nostalgic vibe, had those throwbacks to the old movie, but still is its own thing, and was able to achieve that nostalgia that I think a lot of people were especially like you were talking about, beloved people who loved that 80s movie, or if you loved the original Top Gun, this is, perfect sequel in my opinion.
This is the movie you've been
waiting for like 40 years for this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say it's like it's interesting because I remember, like I said, I had pretty high expectations going into this movie. So but it's like I'm not a fucking dickhead, so it's like if a movie's not quite getting, it's like I'll be like, okay, I'll as I'm watching, I can kind of bring my expectations down. So I'm watching and I'm enjoying the movie, and it's like the first act and the second act. I'm like, okay, yeah, this feels like a sequel to Top Gun. Like it feels like they're using. I gotta say, it was almost to the movie's detriment a little bit, as towards the beginning where I was like this calling everybody by their call sign all the time, and some of this cheesy dialogue and stuff. I'm like this like. In Top Gun, because it was a movie that came out before I was born, it's something that I easily excused in that movie because I'm like, this is just 80s cheese or whatever. And so I'm watching this movie and they're doing a lot of the similar stuff. They've got some like very like I don't know if macho is the right word, but it's very like direct dialogue where it's like, hey, you're the hot shot flyer. It's like, I'm the hot shot flyer. Like very like that kind of 80s dialogue. And they're all calling each other by their call signs.
Very almost Michael Bay almost dialogue.
Yeah, like
not bad.
It's like that was like it was almost douchey, but it felt genuine at the same time. Like
I think
it felt like innocent, like weirdly innocent. Like
I feel like part of that, and I this is just a speculation. I'm not trying to steal valor or say I was a military at any moment in the military, but I really imagine that like that culture of those like fucking ace pilot guys probably isn't super far off from what they present in Top Gun in terms of like, this is my call sign. Like I live this call sign. This is like my life. This is who I am. I'm not Andrew. I'm whatever. Ace, my call sign.
Yeah.
So like, it's definitely cheesy and it has that. To me, I would say that all served the whole like nostalgic thing. But
that like this is what I'll say. Like so I'm watching the movie and like this stuff's happening and I'm kind of like, man, this feels almost like it's holding like the movie has its foot in the past. Like it's like maybe they needed to modernize more. And so I'm watching and I'm like, okay, like this is fine. I'm enjoying this, but it's like it feels like it's stuck with Top Gun. Like it feels like maybe they should have taken this opportunity to like make it truly modern.
They haven't broken through that yet.
Yeah, and so I'm watching and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good. And it's like, okay, it's probably going to be something I ding the movie on because like it's kind of not totally working for me in like our current modern setting. But by the time the movie gets to its third act and like the third act of this movie, I gotta say the first two acts are great and they use pacing and they're written really well and it's tightly edited and stuff. But by the time you get to the third act and the movie really fucking kicks it into fucking whatever high gear, and the emotional payoff starts happening and the action payoff starts happening, all the stuff they set up is starting to pay off. You're like, oh no, all this setup was totally needed. Like you needed them to be using the call signs the whole time so that when they're in the last action scene, I don't want to spoil anything, they're calling out each other's call signs. You're like, you know exactly who they're talking about and you know what the relationships are and you know why this is an emotionally important moment for that character and like whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was like, it was like not being able to see a puzzle in totality until you're
almost done.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, now I get it. It's like all this bullshit brown that looked terrible. It's like it's creating this tapestry. And so I gotta say, by the end of the movie, I was just like, it felt like pretty necessary to me that they kind of did things the way they did, so that those emotional beats and so that the action sequences and the way that they were choreographed kind of made sense. And yeah, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's something I'm totally still going to say is like not something that worked for me completely. Like I still think that maybe to a degree, obviously I've only seen the movie once, so it's like, I'd like to see it again and just see how I feel. But like maybe the movie had a little bit, like it almost felt like until the ending of the movie, it almost felt to me, I was like, this feels like a third movie. This feels like there's a second chapter that I didn't see because like there were certain characters that had dynamics with other characters that like Jennifer Connelly's character. She's not in the first movie. They like reference, like there's a line in the first movie where they talk about her character like once, but it's a throwaway line. So, but she in this movie, her and Tom Cruise are like,
it's the love interest.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think, I was reading somewhere that they'd never shared the screen together in their fucking long careers.
Wild.
Which seems weird to me, yeah. But yeah, it was cool seeing these like at this point on-screen legends sharing the screen for the first time, so that was really cool. But it was like her character had all this development that we didn't see, that like she had a history with Tom Cruise, and there was a couple of characters that were kind of like that, and I was like watching, I'm like, man, it almost feels like there should have been a Top Gun 2 that like addressed this. But once again, it was something that I felt midway through the movie, but then by the end, I'm like, oh no, like this is
we didn't need to see that because we have this payoff near now.
Well, yeah, they gave it the time. That was what I was afraid of. Like maybe a midway through this movie, I was like, oh, I don't know if this relationship's gonna have the time to develop. I don't know if like all these call signs and these characters, like these new characters, I don't know if they're gonna have enough time to develop. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna care enough by the end that like this emotional payoff. But it's like, I gotta say, they gave all these characters the time and space they needed to breathe and develop and have these emotional impacts. And it's like, and so to me, by the end of the movie, everything just fucking lined up, and I'm like, holy, this feels like I don't know why, but it's like so rarely in movies these days, it feels like the whole, like it was all constructed from beginning to end, and like the editing and the writing and the acting and the like, everything was like put together to service,
fed into each other. It all, to your point of the third act, I agree, and it kind of felt like everything was like building and it comes together. And I don't want to spoil anything, obviously, but there's that moment where Jon Hamm's character kind of like steps up, and he's like, all right, like whatever. I don't want to, again, no, I'm trying to talk around this, not spoil it. But to me, that's that moment where it's like shit gets real. That's where the switch flipped. That's where things started to like kind of come together. And it was like, again, this doesn't spoil anything. It's a Top Gun movie. Everyone knows there's a fucking homoerotic beach scene. Like we know that it's Top Gun.
It was awesome.
It was awesome. It was very good. This movie, I will say,
I liked it better than the volleyball.
It was way better than the volleyball. Yeah. Way better. Actually felt like it served the story as well.
Yeah, it did.
As opposed to just a random like.
Yeah. Oh man, this movie's so good.
This movie's so good.
I gotta mention. Like, I know this review's probably running long, but it's like fuck. I don't know. I can't say enough good things about this movie. There are some standout performances, I think. Fucking Miles Teller
big time,
is nuts in this movie. He's so good. It's hands down my favorite role he's ever inhabited and been in. It's like it's weird. Like, I knew that his role was the son of Goose from the first movie, but I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine or whatever. But it's like, watching the movie, you're like, this guy looks like fucking Goose. Like, it's like, I totally buy that this is the son of this character, and like the way he behaves, and like it was so good.
The fucking bar scene, where it like almost mirrors the similar scene from the first one. That blew my mind. Like seeing it in that context and whatever. Yeah, that whole scene, it was like, exactly. It sold it. That is that guy's son.
Yeah. Jon Hamm, like you said before, it's like, he has some incredible. He has. It's weird because I can't remember what the fucking line is, which is gonna like really undermine what I'm saying right now. But it's like, it's such a the words he actually speaks are not impressive at all. But in the movie, there's a scene when they like go out on the mission that they're setting up for this movie, and he says something basically like "We are a go," or "We're like something like that. It's like
it was like fire like it wasn't fire torpedoes, but it was like telling them to launch. Yeah, it was like giving them the okay
planes in the air or whatever.
Yeah.
And the
something
way they
daggers,
cut it, and the way that they cut it, and the music and everything like worked together, it was like,
oh, it was so epic.
Something about this is like the most iconic thing I've ever seen. It was like, it was so epic, and it was like, and I kept thinking, I'm like, I almost wish they would have written something more unique so that it's like I could have remembered what he said, because it's like his cadence and the shot selection, everything was like so fucking good. It reminded me a lot, actually. It's a weird reference, but in the first Transformers movie, there's this line that Tyrese Gibson says when it's like they're getting attacked by the Scorpion Transformer, Scorponok, and this big fucking like what do they call AC-130s, or the big planes with the like in Call of Duty. And then he just says, "Bring the rain." He like shouts it into a radio, and then the fucking gun starts. And it's like, I'll never forget "Bring the Rain" from Transformers because of how fucking epic and cool that scene is. And it was like, I'm like, this happens a handful of times in movies, that it's like the editing and the line and the delivery and everything was so fucking perfect that it's like just my brain was like, this is pure enjoyment. This is kind of a spoiler. I shouldn't say. I'll make it super unspoilery. There's a legacy character, a character from the first Top Gun that makes an appearance in the movie. And the way they did because like Tom Cruise is obviously in the movie, but like the way they did that scene was so fucking tasteful. And I just got to like throw props to them for figuring out how to do this scene.
And it had such emotion to it. Like they did it. Not only was it like tasteful, but it also really like it served just the emotional undertone they were going for, and really like brought the stakes back up again, sort of for me. Like very well shot, very tasteful.
Yeah, it's a scene that totally. Once again, this movie so many times it did this to me, where I was sitting there and I'm like, I guess there's so many movies I've seen that just don't stick the fucking landing, and like midway through a scene or something, I'm like, oh, this just isn't quite there. Like you tried, you gave it a go or whatever, and it didn't work out. And it's like in this movie, I had like probably 5 or 6 moments where I like was having that feeling where I'm like, oh, they're not gonna land this, and then they just fucking stuck like the landing
watching
every fucking
watching
time.
A snowboarder like do a flip, and it's like, oh, it's like that moment of like, oh god, and then he lands it. It's like, oh, he landed it. Good.
And it's like, I don't know. Like I guess last thing I got to call out is just the like I think we already mentioned it, but it's like the action sequences are phenomenal. I think
I am dying for behind the scenes on how they achieved. Like I know how they achieved it conceptually, but I want to see it. I want to see everything that went in to the making of this movie, because it would be that alone, like a documentary about that would be worth watching, because it like, I don't want to overhype or over whatever, because I know that can be the kiss of death for people enjoying a movie, but like it's some of the most impressive things I've seen in terms of like just epic and just fucking cool.
This is gonna sound odd again, but I'm gonna reference another movie which I think did it not as good, and it's interesting. So the new Batman movie came out this year, and something the Batman did that didn't quite work for me was that it really stuck to close-ups and tight shots for a lot of the film, and like soft focus, so you couldn't get a really, some of the times with some of the action sequences, you couldn't get a really good grasp on what was going on. And obviously, like, I really enjoyed that movie and it worked for me overall and stuff. But watching this movie and how when they decided to use wide shots and when they decided to use the close shots and stuff, it was like, this is what it feels like when
masterful.
It's like perfect. It's like, I'm never confused about what's going on. They're using these impactful close-ups when they need to. There's this one shot where the camera's in an F-18 and it's Tom Cruise and he's leading these 3 other jets, and you see them all.
It's the coolest shot in the whole fucking movie.
Come into formation or whatever, and it's like it's goosebumping news. Like, this is incredible. Like this is why people get into making movies, is because they see shit like this and they're like, I want to evoke emotion like that, and I want to do shit like that. And it's like just pure coolness.
I would say the entire third act of this movie is just pure, like, adrenaline, cool, epic. Yeah. Like, just the scope and like you said, the transition between these beautiful close-ups and wide shots. I'm never once in this movie was I thinking like, oh, why are we so tight in this guy? Like, why did they choose that shot? Yeah. Or like, right as I'm thinking like it's close up, it's like, oh, I really want to see. Like it's like as I'm thinking that they pull out to a wide to show the scope of something.
It's interesting because we've had this conversation with people recently, but it's like oftentimes when I see media that from filmmakers I enjoy or from whatever, it's like I find myself sometimes being like trying to get into the head of the filmmaker and being like, why did you make the decision? If something doesn't quite click with me, I'm like, well, why did they make that decision? And then internally I'm like, it's not making excuses, but it's like really trying
justifying it.
Yeah. And it's like this movie, I didn't have to do that at all. No. I was just like, this person is making a product that is like excellent. It's like it was like somebody making a fine chair, and it's like they've made like they know exactly. Like I said, I came out of this movie and one of the things I said was like it was some of the most confident directing I think I've ever witnessed. It's like it felt so fucking like this is a guy who knows what he's doing and he knows what he wants to fucking make, and he really understands what he's going for, and he fucking delivered. It had that kind of Lord of the Rings feeling to me, where it's like those movies also to me similarly. That's why I love them so much. Is like they just feel like I know what I'm going for here. I know what I'm making. I know what I want this to look like, and this is the product that I wanted to showcase.
And communicating that, because I think that's where the disconnect with a lot of directors is. It's like they might have the idea and they might have a specific style, but something to varying degrees gets lost in that translation between director, writer, and audience. And this movie just doesn't. I will say I fucking hate people who clap at the end of movies, like not at like a premiere or something.
Like and if there's no one to hear,
it's like, no, stop. I almost wanted to clap at the end of this movie. Like that's how I felt at the end of this. Like was like, fuck yeah, bravo, like stand up and like fist in the air, like 80s style, like freeze frame at the end. Like fuck yeah, this is great.
There's one I can't remember. There was a scene in this movie where somebody in the audience did kind of give like a phew and like a little clap, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah.
Like I also said the same thought.
Like, there was like very few. I think there was like maybe 5 or 6 of us in the whole theater. Like we went and saw it at 10 o'clock late.
10 o'clock on a Thursday.
So yeah, not the prime time showing, but it's like when that person clapped, I'm like, man, yeah, that was
like
sick.
Normally that would like almost have me want to get out of my seat and be like, shut the fuck up. But I agree. I was like, no, like
it felt earned in this movie.
Yeah,
it felt
totally.
like they deserve this. I don't know. I guess like with the action scenes, I just wanted to say that what was cool too was that the action scenes had a build. It wasn't like they fucking blew their load right off the bat then they never matched, or it was somewhere in the middle and then they never matched. Because like some action movies, it's like there's this epic scene in the beginning or midway through, but then they can't match that level of energy.
Yeah, they kind of just plateau or worse, dip off.
This movie starts with an excellent action sequences, and then it just kind of like it's almost like it's excellent at the beginning, and then it kind of like chill, and it's like we're at this level of excellence, so we're kind of maintain. And then at the end, it's like, oh, now we have the steady incline of like, this is how good the action is.
Until the very fucking peak at near the end.
Yeah.
And then just perfect level off and into the conclusion.
Doesn't overstay its welcome. Like it feel like
this movie they could have made this movie way too long.
Yeah.
And it would have, despite everything that they achieved, it would have like really drained it.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that.
Yeah.
It was perfect in terms of pacing.
Yeah, it was once again, it was another scene where I'm like, oh, they're not going to stick the ending like that. They're going to it's going to be too long and it's going to feel too whatever. God damn you. I'll be right back.
We know this is a long review because the camera.
Yeah. Excuse us. This is a really good movie.
It's a really good movie that go see it in theaters. Like I'll say it a billion times. Go fucking don't just go see it in theaters. See it in like IMAX or Ultra AVX. Do yourself a favor.
I don't know if this movie came out in 3D, but I'm tempted to go see it in 3D because I know what this director is capable of in 3D, and I know that he knows 3D, and I know that he knows how to utilize 3D. So I'm like tempted to see this movie in 3D because I think it might actually be a good 3D experience if it's in 3D. I'm not even sure if it's in 3D. But yeah, I totally agree. I guess to wrap it up, it's like this is a 10 out of 10 for me. It's the best movie I've seen this year.
Yeah.
If you can go see it in theater. Do not, if you are in Cabri or that fucking in the small town that I'm from, don't go see it in Swift Current. Please, for the love of God, don't see it in that awful theater.
Come to Saskatoon or go to Medicine Hat.
Yes, go to, like, at the very least, go to Gull Lake to see it. Wait for it to be in Gull Lake. Or if you can, come to Saskatoon and see it in like an IMAX or a Laser Ultra, because it's like you won't regret it. I just can't recommend this movie enough. I just like I said, since 2019 I've been saying it's gonna be the best movie ever. And
you were
just
right,
like
you called it.
Tongue in cheek or whatever. But it's like it was fucking incredible. It's like I would absolutely buy this movie.
I will buy this movie just for, I hope, the behind the scenes that they do for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a great movie in itself, but just the behind the scenes, I think. If they They have to show us some of what went into making
this
fucking
yeah.
thing.
I saw on YouTube they already have like a behind the scenes featurette or something. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure like this movie. I was actually curious to see how it was received because I didn't even look at scores or reviews or anything before we went in. And then last night I looked at Rotten Tomatoes and I don't know if it's still there, but it was at a 97%, and I'm like, yep.
Yeah,
totally makes sense.
Well,
it's just
totally
like,
deserving.
I'm so glad that I'm so glad. I hope this movie does well commercially, but it's like I'm really glad that critically it's getting well received because it's just nice when your opinion and the public's opinion. It's like we're all kind of like, yeah, we can all agree that this is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's like 2004 Academy Awards when the Return of the King won 11 Academy Awards. It was just like, yep, we are all in agreement.
We're on the same page here.
This is awesome. Thank you so much. Or do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, I guess just parting thought that we didn't talk about. I think the humor was just fucking on point as well.
Yeah.
There were a couple moments there where I was laughing out loud and didn't expect that from this movie, and it was nice.
And it wasn't overdone. Like
not at all.
A common criticism of Marvel movies now is that like they'll use humor. They're so good at humor that they'll use it as a crutch oftentimes, and they'll use it inappropriately in moments that like should be emotional and stuff. And that's a common complaint you'll see leveled at those movies. This movie, not a problem at all. It's like all the humor was just used in the best places in the perfect amount of time.
Broke the tension, but didn't like ruin an emotional scene.
No, oh god, it's just I can't believe it. I didn't think I liked it. I didn't know if I was gonna gush like this, but but thank you so much for watching this review.
Yes.
Star Wars Obi-Wan came out last night, the TV show. We're gonna check that out and review that at some point. I want to review Prehistoric Planet. That also just wrapped up this week, so we'll see if we can.
Yeah, we're gonna just pump out content as much as we feel like it.
Yeah.
There's lots. This seems like a new. There's Stranger Things also. We have to talk about that.
Stranger Things is back. Yep.
The Bob's Burgers movie even maybe. I don't know. Lots of cool stuff that's come out that we like seeing stuff. We like watching stuff. We like talking about it. So, look forward to more content or, don't. That's cool too.
Piss off.
But go see it in theaters.
Yeah.
Go watch Top Gun Maverick in theaters.
Hard recommend.
I would say it's it's an insistence. Go do it.
You have to, or we'll hurt you.
Yeah.
Physically.
That's just Francois. I'm not party to that type of threats.
I'll hurt you physically if you don't go see Top Gun in theaters.
Anyways,
I'm
bye.
gonna harm you physically.